Everybody turn to Genesis 37. While I guess this was Wednesday, I believe. Maybe Tuesday. I think it was Wednesday. Anyway, while I was at work, um, the Holy Spirit shared something with me. The way he kind of explained it, I'll show you guys here in a couple minutes, but the way he kind of explained it, it took on a whole different level of depth. And I understood a couple things a little bit differently than what we normally understood it as. I mean, everybody knows Revelation 12 is speaking of the church, right? About the woman in Gastreco. Well, I learned a couple things different throughout the centuries, throughout the decades, years, whatever, in Israel. Each tribe of Israel took over the temple. Okay? They each had what's the word? A ministerial operation within the temple. Okay? Each one had a house. There was a house of Joseph, there was a house of Ephraim, a house of Manasseh, a house of Reuben, the house of so on and so forth. And I started researching that, looking it up, and every tribe of Israel at one point led the temple. It wasn't just the Levites. And when you go through and study the Hebrew, within the prophets, it explains, like Isaiah and Jeremiah, it explains that the house of Joseph went astray, the house of Ephraim went astray, the house of Manasseh went astray, and I always was under the impression that that was referring to the tribe itself that went astray, and it's not. Look up the word house; it means temple. So they actually led the temple astray at one point or another. And when Christ appeared on the scene, it was because the 12th tribe had led it astray.
So every single one of them.
Every single one of them, down to the last tribe, had led the temple astray, or led the people astray.
Did they?
What?
I was going to say, did they each have a month of the year to leave the temple, or
No.
was it a yearly thing?
It was a decade.
Okay.
Some went for decades, some went for centuries. Just they had different rules, different reigns, different years. But the Levites, when Israel went into captivity in Babylon, the Levites fell. I should say it fell under witchcraft, big time, and the tribes or I should say the other tribes, were the ones that stood up to take over and try to bring the temple back to Haya, but in doing so failed every time. But as I was going through this, the Holy Spirit started sharing some things with me, and I was at work actually studying this thing, and he showed me a couple things. First of all, the Hebrew, there is no such thing as a parable in Hebrew. The actual word, the parable, is not found in the Hebrew. What is found is the word idiom. Now I'm going to explain the difference. In the Greek you have parables, in the Hebrew you have idioms. Okay? And the word idiom means a figurative meaning. A figurative meaning that is totally separate from a literal meaning. It also means symbolism. And that it would be like, for an example, if there's something about somebody, like if I'm trying to say something to somebody, I'm going to say it in a figurative way to kind of lessen the blow so they don't feel offense or be offended at it. Not pointing at you. Um, in hope that the person that I'm speaking to will get the hint, will figure it out, and take care of it without me having to be abrasive and rebuke them. Okay? But parables are completely different. All right? Parables, let me give you the word parable. It means a comparison or illustration with a moral principle. A principle, or sorry, a comparison or illustration with a moral principle. In other words, you can go back through the New Testament and you can read everything that Christ said. Okay, everything he taught, it was a principle. There was something moral to the story he was giving, but it wasn't exact. And if you go back and read again, I think it's in Matthew 7 or 8 or 9. It says that he never spoke to anybody except within parables. Okay, which means a comparison. So in other words, if you want to understand Christ and exactly what he was trying to get across, you've got to look at the moral of the story, not just at what he's saying. Okay? There are a lot of times he equates the kingdom of heaven to things that are going on in the earth. All right? And it's a principle, but it's a moral principle. It's not something to be taken literal. Okay? Like, for an example, when he told his disciples, I go to prepare a place for you, and I will receive you unto myself. That's a principle. It's not a physical, actual, hey, he's going to rapture me up in the heavens, and I'm going to have me a mansion, gold, and that's not what he's referring to. It's a moral principle. There will come a time where that kingdom that is being built right now will descend and end up coming down to earth. And that's what he was talking about. Okay, if you set your goal or set your sight on what is unseen, you're not going to be distracted with what is seen. And that was the principle he's trying to get across. I go to prepare a place for you. In other words, keep your eyes on that place coming down, not the place that we're going up to. Because we're not going up. No man has ascended. Okay? Excuse me. Genesis 37. Excuse me. Is everybody there? I'm going to start at verse 5. Excuse me. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we are binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves stood around about, and made obeisance to my sheaf. And his brethren said unto him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us, or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet more for his dreams and for his words. And I want you to stop for just a second, because within this parable, or I should say within this idiom or dream he's had, the thing with an idiom is you have to investigate every aspect of the idiom. You can't just take it at face value and say, okay, it's a dream. He's the sheaf. His brothers are the other sheaves, and they're all bowing down. What's in a sheaf? You've got stalks, you've got seeds. Okay? Seed symbolizes offspring. So Joseph's offspring will rule over the rest of the other tribes. Is everybody following that? That's what he's seeing here. Now I want you to pay attention to this, because within this dream has a twofold content. Okay? We saw in the first dream, this actually, did Joseph not rule over his brother in Egypt? Okay, so the first dream came to pass. Right? Okay, now watch this. Verse 9. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obeisance to me. I want you to see this because this is the same dream John has in the book of Revelation. Okay, watch. He told it to his father and to his brethren, and his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee on the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the saying. I want you to take a highlighter. His father observed the saying. In other words, he didn't cast it down, he didn't rebuke it, he didn't toss it out the window, he actually observed it. In other words, he was looking at something a little bit more intense. Now I'm going to show you something here. Revelation 12. And I'm going to show you every bit of Joseph's dream. For one, what is a sheaf?
It's wheat, isn't it?
It's wheat. Okay, what is wheat?
Food, grain.
It's referring to the saints. Okay, so the wheat technically is a saint. Well, when you bind up the wheat, the corn kernel is still in the ear. Okay, so the offspring is still within the wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm going to show you this real quick because what the second vision or second dream that Joseph was having was his offspring or his seed rolling over the stars, the sun, and the moon. What was that?
Rachel, she's in there in the corner.
Go get back in bed.
She's in the bathroom.
All right. You want me to pause this? Go ahead and pause it.